Alright, so we're starting the last line of Samach Amud Beis. Metzudas Chaya v'Oifes v'Dogim Yesh B'hem Mishum Gezel. So this goes back to the previous Mishnah on Daf Nuntes Amud Beis on the top. It says that Metzudas Chaya v'Oifes v'Dogim Yesh B'hem Mishum Gezel Mipnei Dרכי Shalom. Rabbi Yossi Omer Gezel Gomer. So if someone sets out a trap to trap a weasel, a fish, a bird, whatever it is, it's Gezel, because maybe it belongs to somebody else's. So Mipnei Dרכי Shalom, we don't do that. It brings to mind the big taisus over there in Kedushin about Ani Mahapich B'Charara, about going fishing. If you're going fishing, am I allowed to set up shop, even 10 feet away from you, because maybe I'm going to be catching your fish. You may have rights to it before me. But let's see what this is about. Rabbi Yossi says it's Gezel Gomer. So what does Gezel Gomer mean? It's either Gezel or it's not Gezel, right? So Zok Rashi in the Mishnah, Metzudas Chayim Midaraisa, Kol Kamad Lemotel Yodei Lav Gezelu. Kol Zman, it didn't come into your hands, it's not Gezelu. The Gemara Mefarish Lebe Metzudas She'en Lem Teich looking like Kalev. So the Gemara is going to explain over here that the Nakuda is that what's happening is that there's different types of traps. There's a kind of trap that the entire animal gets stuck in the cage. So that's my Kalim. So I'm being koined with my Kalim. But if it's just a trap where it's holding the animal down, like it's in handcuffs or something like that, so then my kalim aren't kind of the animal, because it's not the animal's not in the keli. So it's gezel gomer b'gemar mefarish gezel gomer midivreihem. It's gezel gomer not midiraisa, but it's gezel gomer midrabanan. The time of the Rabbi Yossi b'kulu, the reason of Rabbi Yossi for all the things in the Mishnah is the kasavar osman dרכי shalom mesh any zeicha looking at kinyan gomer k'zeicha. All these things that we're going to mention in the Mishnah, that were mentioned, are all different things that the Chacham were Mesakim B'nei Dרכי Shalom. So they did this that normally, according to the regular Ikar Adin of the Shulchan Aruch, it would seem that these things are not considered a kinyan. But B'nei Dרכי Shalom, they were Mesakim that even though it's not a real kinyan, but they were Mechadish, so to speak, a real kinyan over here, that these things can be some sort of kinyan. So the question is, were they mechadish all kinds of new kinyanim, or they extended the old kinyanim to work for these things also, right? Because kalim, it's not a new kinyan, right? That's a kinyan that we know about. So let's see what the Gemara says. So Zok the Gemara Metzudas Chayim v'Oifes v'Dogim v'Yesh B'hem Mishum Gezel v'Uzli v'Oihari. If it's Zok Rashi Uzli, it's Rishasai Shal Chutin She'etz Lahem Toich. It's a bunch of nets and threads. So when let's say the cat puts its foot in it, it gets all wrapped around. So it has a toich. So being that it has it inside, so that's considered like a keli. And if he's trapped in there, he's good. But oihari is made out of gemi, Rashi says, which is made out of rubber. So these things are these cases, the animals are nichnas l'toich kelim. Tapusam achal pamad aleph kulei amaloi pligi. So when we're talking about these kinds of traps, the uzli and the uhari, so then everyone agrees, because since they have a toich, the kelim are koina, and it's going to be gezel gomer. Keep pligi, where the machlekes Rabbi Yossi and the Chachamim is belechi v'kukri. The lechi is a kind of trap that does not have a base kibul, like the way that they catch fish. So the way that they would catch fish was they would have a ring the size of the fish or whatever size, and they would put a bunch of needles in it, and they would have some bait floating around next to it, and then the fish swims by, and then it gets stecht by the needles, and then that's how you would catch the fish. So that's not in the keli, that's getting poked, and it's like the same way you would say that if mainly you catch something in a fishing net, so that got caught in your keli, but on your fishing rod, that's not being caught by the kli, so therefore it's not considered a kinyan. So that's the machlekes Rabbi Yossi, and so belechi v'kukri is sharmer tudus u'mechshaylim, different kinds of traps. Shanaisim chut aruch benar v'chayzu by machbal pnei kula. So this was some kind of fishing string that had a bunch of needles throughout it, and that's how they would catch the fish. So in that, being that it's not the animal, the fish is not going into the keli, it's not going into there's no clay kibble, so then, according to the Tanakama, it's going to be also to take from B'nei Dרכי Shalom, and according to Rabbi Yossi, it's going to be regular gezel. I mean, everybody holds it. It's also, no one's going to hold that you're allowed to do this, but fine. I mean, this would mean that you'd be taking it away from somebody else. Okay, Next case in the Mishnah was Metzias Cherish V'Shoita V'Katan. So what's that? Let's go back to the Mishnah for that. Metzias Cherish V'Shoita V'Katan Yesh B'hem Mishum Gezel Mipnei Dרכי Shalom Rabbi Yossi Emer Gezel Gomer. So again, if a Cherish or somebody who's deaf and dumb, Shoita is a person who's not Avdas, and a Katan is somebody under the age of Bar Mitzvah. So if he finds something, if you take it away from him, so then it's Yesh be'em mishum gezal b'nei darkei shalom. Technically speaking, it should really belong to the father or whoever is taking care of this person. But because b'nei darkei shalom, the kid's 11 years old and he finds $100 bill on the floor, he's very excited about it. He doesn't want his father to have it. He wanted to save it up for his allowance or whatever it is. So in b'nei darkei shalom, they were misagan that you can't take it away from them. So Zok the Gemara, Rav Chisda, Gezel Gomer midivrei hem l'may nafkamina. So if we're saying that it's usher, so what's the difference why we're saying that it's usher? Right? So even according to Rabbi Yossi, it's not Gezel Gomer midoraisa. Why? Because Cher Shreit of a Katan, there's no Kinyan al pi Torah. Right? And they weren't Zoicha, they can't be Zoicha with what they pick up. So what does it mean? Gezel Gomer midivrei hem. That it's Gezel Gomer from Chachamim, that it's also to steal from them. And like Rashi said in the Mishnah, that she'osu mipnei darkei shalom she'en zoicha l'knei kinyan gomer k'zoicha. To give them a right, meaning we just extended the zchia that there should be shalom around. So l'may nafkamin, it's a practical more. What do we gain by Rabbi Yossi saying that it's gezel gomer, the Tanna Kama saying that it's mipnei darkei shalom, and for the Gemara la'itziyah b'dayonim. So according to Rabbi Yossi, because it's considered gezel, so then let's say the father takes it away. But let's say the kid's 11 years old, he finds $100 bill on the floor. And the father says, you're a katan, I own it. So the father wants to take it away. So the kid says, nothing doing, I'm taking you to Bezdin. So he takes him to Bezdin, and Bezdin would take it away from the father and give it back to the son. So according to Rabbi Yossi, the Chacham were Masakan that should have a din of Gezel Mamish. So if a person takes it away, Bezdin would be Mechayvim to give it back. But according to the Tanna Kama, Bezdin is not Mechuyev to deal with this, and it doesn't have a din of Gezel like that you would be Maitzit B'dayon. Okay, next case. Back to the Mishnah, Ani hamanaka v'rosh hazayis. If you have an ani that's banging around on the top of the olive tree, so mashataklev gezel gomer gezel b'nei darkei shalom. So what falls down from the olive tree is going to be gezel b'nei darkei shalom. Rabbi Yossi emer gezel gomer. And it's interesting because if you look in Mishnah's Peah, I think it's Perek Zion, or towards the end, there's a Mishnah there that discusses the difference between olive trees and other trees in terms of Matan Saniyim, because there were different kufas. It was very interesting. I never really paid attention to this, but there were different kufas of olive trees in Eretz Yisrael. It seems that at one point they destroyed a lot of the olive trees, the olive groves in Eretz Yisrael. But then at a later date, the olive trees grew back, and it was much more popular to have olives. So depending on the kufas, it was interesting. It was an interesting idea. But whatever the story is, that if the ani is knocking things down from the Rosh Hashanah, so if the Balabayas or somebody else takes the Paris that fell down, so that's going to be Gezel, Mibnei Darkei Shalom, or Rabbi Yossi says it's going to be Gezel Gomer. So what's the deal over here? So Tana we learned to the Brisa. If the ani took the zaytim took the olives from the tree, and he plucked them off with his hand, and then he put them on the ground. So I raise that Gezel Gomer. But this is going to be Gezel Gomer Midiraisa because he's taking the things out of his hand. It already belonged to him. But if he knocked it down from the tree and he never picked it up, so then that's not going to be considered Gezel Gomer. So this is where the Mishnah is saying that it's also to take them Mipnei Darkei Shalom. It's interesting because the Mishnah and Peah mentioned a few times, at least twice, Al Tasek V'Loilam. There's a pasuk that you're not allowed to, you have to respect the boundaries of the ani, meaning that if the ani takes something, then you're not allowed to, take it away from him. I don't know why this is coming to mind 100%, but there is something, that if the ani is standing there with a basket, so then that shows that he's there to collect, and even the stuff that falls on the floor, he's going to pick it up later. Right now he's banging it down, and then later he's going to go collect it and put everything in the basket, so you have to be careful not to just take things away. But the Gemara is going to bring a Maisa to show exactly what the halacha is. Rav Kahana went to Hutzal once. He saw somebody that was throwing sticks at the decal at the palm tree. And the dates were falling off the tree. So Rav Kahana went and took one of the dates and ate it. So Amalei Chazimar So the guy told Rav Kahana that you should see that I'm taking the pears with my hand and I'm throwing them on the ground. So I'm being guided bekinyan gomer. So how do you have a right to take the dates away from me? So Amalei, so Rav Kahana said to me, he says, you must be from Rabbi Yoshi's town. Why? Kari alei v'tzadik yisei reilam. Why is this? Zok Rashi. L'figach ata baki b'dinin. L'fishu derish l'rab ma'idin. Rabbi Yoshia made sure that everyone in the city knew all the halachas, and he was insistent that everybody should know. So this fellow was a baki in the halachas because he would listen to Rabbi Yoshi Yashir. So he knew what the halacha was. So what's the issue over here? So it was very interesting. The Chassam Sofer says the more over here. They bring a Chassam Sofer brings the more the Gevart. Said the Mishnah Nova says at the end of the first parak, it says al shlosh dvarim olam kayim, right? Al din, al emes, al shalom. Yeah. So lefi the din, it's mutter for anybody to take the pairs full of the tree because the person who's collecting them was never zeichet. But you're missing shalom. Why do you say about Rabbi Yoshi that he's a tzaddik yisayid olam? A person who teaches halachas, he's a tzaddik yisayid olam. He teaches halachas, you know. Why is he tzaddik yisayid olam? So Chassam Sofer says more the gezach. He says that there's din, emes, and shalom. That's what he states in Mishnah. So he says, "Lemfi had din." It's mutter to take the pairs full of the tree, but you're lacking shalom. So mipnei shalom, they were masakin that it's mutter to take that, right? But if it's mutter to take it, then you're still lacking in the mishpat. But Rabbi Yoshi taught his people to take the pairs with their hands and be zeichen it l'chatchila, to be zeichen it properly. So like this, they could be mekayim the mishpat and the shalom together. So when you're mekayim the mishpat and the shalom together, then the olam is going to have a kiyum. So then yamed ha'olam al yisod echad ha'koil es hadin ha'emes v'hashalom. Then you'll have the din, then you'll have the emes, and you'll have the shalom all in one thing. So that's why he said tzaddik yisod olam. Not because he taught the halachas, because these halachas show din, emes, and shalom. So it was upholding the world through this specific halacha. Okay, next. When the goyim come to take leket shuk and pay, we don't stop them in bnei darkei shalom. You know, we have to make sure that we don't, step on their toes too much because we're still in Golus and it's not so. We got to be careful with what we do. So Zakli Umar Tan Rabban, we learned in the Brayso, Mefarnisen Ani Enochrim and Mani Yisrael. When we give out the checks, when we give out the money, we got to give the goyim together with the Yidden. Meaning the same way we give money to the Jews, we'd have to give money to the goyim. Mevakrim Mechele Enochrim Mechele Yisrael. And when you go visit the sick people in the hospital, you can visit the goyim as well. V'kayvrin Meisei Enochrim and Meisei Yisrael. And when you bury the goyim, you could bury them together with the Yidden. That's what says the Dרכי Shalom. Because of Dרכי Shalom. So that's what Rashi says. What are we doing over here? What's happening? What's the story over here that we're burying the goyim together? So Levi Kivrei Yisrael. We're not saying that we bury them in the Jewish cemeteries. Elamas askin behem im matzam harugim im Yisrael. We deal with them if we find them killed together with the Jews. Then the same way we're going to bury the Jews, so we're going to bury the goy also. As general rule, the Chaver Kaddish belongs to Chesed Shlemus was not needed in this tragic incident, right? But the Hatzalah still goes, and even times Chesed Shlemus will go, but not mechuyev to give him kavod Yisrael. He's not a Yisrael, right? But he's there. Do you think Goyim don't call Hatzalah? Goyim call Hatzalah all the time. Why? Because they're reliable and they do good work. So why shouldn't they? They know that they're there. So why not? So it seems like it's a shtickle machlekes because over here they bring that the Rashba and the Ritva are cheluk and Rashi with this halacha of kuras goyim, and they say that even if the goyim are by themselves, yesh l'kavram b'nei dרכי shalom. You find a dead guy on the street, so you should be, according to the Rashba and the Ritva, you're supposed to be metapel with them also. The question is a very interesting question. What if you have a guy that's very sick? Let it daven for him. To have a refuah. So if it's Mishum Eva, the Shulchan Aruch says that we don't. But if it's Mishum Eva, if the guy are going to say, they don't daven for us, right? So then we're allowed to daven. For them because we have to make sure that we don't step on their toes. That's the underlying you say it over here, right? So we say, in the olden days in Europe, there would be Mispal Shlem Shal Malchus, right? It's a similar concept, Mishum Eva, right? I think there was a Maisa, there was a guy that was online to Rav Shach. And the name sounded very suspicious. So, someone asked, who's this? This is for my dog. My dog is not well and it needs refuah. So, yeah, you can make somebody feel good. It doesn't say that you have to, you're allowed to make somebody feel good. Okay. Fine. I mean, L'maisa, what comes out of this brayso is a lot of very interesting halachas. And, if things will look a little different if these halachas were carried out properly the way that they should. Some people say, "Oh, they're goyim. No, we don't go them." That's not true. It's today's day and age. Baruch Hashem, the Jews live in peace for the most part. It's not so simple. You know, there are nafkaminas that could come out of here. Okay, let's see the Mishnah over here. Mashallas.
Should they say Kiddush Hashem instead of Dרכי Shalom? Dרכי Shalom is like
Yeah, so that's
milder, like
yeah.
because of,
Yeah, so it's interesting because
to prevent the Kiddush Hashem.
I would imagine this is what we spoke last week, that the concept of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem that the Chazal use, you know, is not necessarily, you know, when you're walking down the street, you shouldn't throw garbage on the floor, right? The guy are going to see, Jews are going to see, whatever it is. Rabbi Chaim Beloshner writes in Nefesh Chaim about, you know, what Kiddush Hashem is. You know, it's he writes this in the beginning of Nefesh Chaim. First of all, he said, "What Titus did l'fnai v'l'fnim," right? See, he was a guy. It's like, Avada to Shrak like a tragedy, and it's a horrible thing. But he says, what one machshav of a yid is so much more powerful than that. You know, Sail type and Sail Mutav. But you know, and the same is true for Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem. It's a big shmooze. I'm not sure where Reb Chaim Beloshner talks about it. It's not in the beginning of Nefesh Chaim. I would have to find it, but it's there. It talks about it. No, there's definitely a concept of you know, we shouldn't do things that are going to get the goyim upset. Whether that means, you know, whether that means, you know, doing crazy things in the street, or whether that means throwing garbage in the street, or whether that means, you know, snobbing them out in some kind of government programs or whatever, you know. All these things are going to be enough kamina lalacha. Okay, let's see the Mishnah. Mashelas isha lachaver tachshud al shvius nafa kvar verechaim v'tanra v'loisav v'loisitchan ima. So you have two women that are friends or their neighbors. Now one of them doesn't do hilchos shvius, right? So we spoke about shvius last week, I think it was. So she doesn't do the shvius properly. She holds on to the perish shvius even after the zman bir, which are osir, and they're osir ba'achila. And Rashi says, "Al shvius lishmar perish shvius latznim and abir ve'elach." So you're not allowed to cook with her. So you're allowed to lend her a nafar kvar, a sifter, and a sieve. Rechaim is a grinder. V'tanur is the oven. Avaloi savar v'leisitchan imay. Don't grind the flour. Don't grind the grain with her, and don't do the butter with her either. Why is that? So the question is, what's the difference? Why are you allowed to lend her stuff, and certain things you're not allowed to do? Why certain things yeah? Why certain things not? So when it comes to the nafa kvar rechaim v'tanur, so even though she might be using it for the Paris, but you know, it's more of an issue that when you're lending her some kalim, you're lending her some stuff to use in the kitchen. Lav dafka she can use it for the shvius, right? But if you're going to be kneading the dough together with her, so then you're being misayaya b'yadaya mamish, and then you have to be careful. Then it would be also chaver. Eishes chaver. So the Pashto says a chaver is somebody who is careful about taking off meiser. So mashelas le'eishes ha'ma'oretz nafel kvaru bareres v'tachenes market zima. She's allowed to lend out to the wife of ha'ma'oretz who's not neman on meiser, meaning that they probably don't take off meiser. You're allowed to lend her a sifter and a sieve, and you're allowed to, you know, sift the flour with her, and you're allowed to grind it with her, and you're allowed to do the merakid with her, even though she's not neman on meiser. Once she pours water into the isa, once she pours water into the flour, so then this mixture of this dough is going to be mechuyev and challah. So now there's going to be an issue because she's not makbid on tumah, right? She doesn't eat chulin b'tara. Just pay attention to what happened in this one line of the Mishnah. First, we're talking about that she's not neman on meiser. Now we're making a sharp left turn. I was saying that no, we were talking about that she's not makbid on tumah. So what happened over here? The Gemara is going to ask this question, right? So now that this is mechuyev and chalos, you have to be careful that it doesn't become tamei. And this isha, this eishes chaver, has to be careful to make sure that she's not going to be misayeya. She's not going to be causing tumah to the challah. So she's not allowed to knead the dough with her. L'fisha ein machzikin yidei ovri avera. You're not allowed to be machzik ovri avera. So I guess in the first case the ovri avera would be with perish shvius, and the second one would be challah b'tumah. This is a very stark term that the Mishnah is using, but really it's only and b'pashas would only be issa d'rabbanan. But the Rambam in Pirshim Shnai says that it's al tashos yadcha and Russia. You shouldn't have any business together with a Russia. So it doesn't matter what it is. If a person's not, you know, it's interesting because in the whole Dumai we don't refer to them as Rishon, we refer to them as Am Ha'aretz, which it was a pretty derogatory term, but still, the Rambam has a very sharp lashon that he says, "I'll touch this yadchem rosh." Okay, so the kulan, everything that we were matter in the Mishnah to lend them, is not b'shas, not during the time of the averos. So we're only matter b'nei darkei shalom, meaning that I guess in a scenario where she would not be told that if you didn't come to her chalavek, so then you shouldn't go. Or or if you could tell her that I'm not lending you my grinder today, and she'll say, okay, fine, I'll just go get it from somebody else, right? So then it'll be okay. But I think the Mishnah is saying that you shouldn't do that. I think that's the point, that you should lend it. Meaning, I think there was a story that Rebbe Chanan saw, two Bachrim, Reuven and Shimon, can you lend me your Sefer? Can you lend me your Gemara? So he said no. So Rebbe Chanan called the guy over and he says, listen, I don't know if you're mechuyev to lend in your Gemara, but to not lend it to me or not. So why do you want to have that title, right? So, you want to say from kite al tumma al meiser al this al that, okay? But you may, the Mishnah is being matted is for you so that you should be able to get along with people, and not that you should be considered asa. Machzikin yidei nocher b'shviyas. We're allowed to be Messiah the Goyim. We're allowed to help the Goyim that are working in Shviyas, Avaloi Yidei Yisrael, but not the Jewish people that are working, because that's going to be Messiah over Aveira. B'Shael and B'Shlemam, you're allowed to greet Goyim with the Shem Hashem, because even though Shalom is one of the Shemis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we know from the Gemara, you're allowed to do that, Mipnei Darkei Shalom, right? So Mipnei Darkei Shalom, you're allowed to say Shalom. Okay. Fine. Rashi, B'Shael and B'Shlemam Kol HaYamim, Aval Pi Shamatel Al Anachri Shem Shemayim, Shashalom Shmei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is not even talking about what the Mishnah Bracha says, that they would actually say to Shem Hashem, Hashem Yimachem Yivarechecha Hashem, like the Mishnah says in the Brachos. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about over here, regular, just saying Shalom to somebody, to a guy. Fine. So, fact the Gemara, Ma'ishin Reish, Ma'ishin Sefer. What's the difference between the Reish and the Sefer? So in the Reish, what did we say? That it's also for this woman to grind and to knead and to sift the flour together with the woman who's suspected of not dealing with shviyas properly. But Ma'ishin the Sefer, then in the Sefer we say that it's mutter to, to do all these malachas together with the wife of an Amoritz. So talk to Gemara. Amar Abaye says that Roiv Amei Aretz master him. Roiv Amei Aretz take off meiser, and the Chacham were just chayshish that there are a few of them that don't take off meiser. So today that to make a big strong statement about taking off meiser, so we'll take off meiser anyways. And the Chacham were so therefore Mipnei Darkei Shalom is mutter to help them out. Rava says it's left off good. Then maybe Roiv Amei Aretz don't take off meiser, but it's a suffix, and there's a tzad to say that it's also to help them out because there's a real chash of avera deraisa. But over here, but Ama Aretz the Reb Meir. Over here we're talking about Ama Aretz of Reb Meir. What is that? V'tuma v'tara d'Rabbanan. We're talking about Reb Meir and Tuma v'tara d'Rabbanan. So let's see Rashi. Rabba Omar la'olam kamef tzamech tzadami. La'olam it's a half and half. Amisapkinan lahu. Really, it's not Roiv Amei Aretz masrim. Really, let's say 80% don't take off meiser, but we're misupik, and it's also to be Messiah, but also l'sayon ha'il v'aver deraisa. It's a pretty clear deraisa if they're not dealing with shviyas properly. And our Mishnah is talking about a person who generally takes off meiser. But Amaharetz the Reb Meir who shachash lechal peris betuma, and the Amaharetz of Reb Meir is somebody who suspects that he does not eat his peris betara. And this Tumah V'Tara we're talking about is chulin of eating Tumah V'Tara. Eating chulin V'Tara is midrabanan. The Torah is here lechel V'Tara el truma kachim lovat. Midaraisa, the only thing they have to eat Tumah V'Tara is truma and kachim. And I guess challah, because that we're going to see in the Gemara, and really challah goes along together with truma always. So hilkach labisur deraisa he. Bnei Darkei Shalom, what will sign? It's not a issue deraisa. So Bnei Darkei Shalom, it's not a big deal. Somebody, Rabbi Flam, said by COVID, he said, in the beginning we were so careful what we're touching and this and that. He said, Hashem is getting us ready for the Beis Hamikdash. You touched it, it's tumah. It's all kinds of things are going to start popping up, but we never thought about them before. So COVID, we're going to be looking them. Okay. So that's what Remeir is. So this is where the Mishnah shifted. This is where that line of the Mishnah shifted from talking about Meiser to talking about Tumah V'Tara. Okay. So the Tanya, so what's this Bryce of Reb Meir? So what's this Amoritz of Reb Meir? The Tanya is Amoritz. What's considered Amoritz? Kol she'enei oichel chulav betara. Somebody who doesn't eat his chul and betara divrei Reb Meir. It's interesting because one of the shvachim that Chazal say about Shaul HaMelech was that he was makbid to the chul and betara always. He's always makbid. But Chacham said kol she'enei ma'aser piroisim. The Chacham said that Amoritz is a person who doesn't take off ma'aser. Hey, the whole list, the Gemara Brachas on Am Zayin and Beis goes through a whole list of the Mezachah, what's considered Amoritz, what's not. Right? But over here, the Chachamim say that it's nothing to do with Tumah V'Tara, it has to do with somebody who doesn't take off Paris. Fine. But this that we said at the end of the Mishnah, that once she pours the water to make it into a dough, don't touch the dough with her. Why? Because now the dough became wet, so it's Mokshel Kabel Tumah. So now you're really going to be Messiah every Avera. So Mechlal the Reishal Abatum V'Taraskin. So it's Muchach that the Isser that we said that it's also for it to be Messiah beforehand in the previous line of the Mishnah is not because of Tumah V'Tara. Only now we're concerned about Tumah V'Tara because until now, like to be Teichen Yima, to be Merak Hedes Yima, the Isa didn't get wet yet. So it's not Mukshal Kabel Tumah, and only now we have an Isser. So if there's no Chash because of the fact that they didn't take off Meiser to Paris, so then Vus Epis now that maybe the Dרכי Shalom were being mat there, there's no Chash Isser over here. Why is there no Chash Isser? So that's what Rashi says. Mechlal the Reishal Abatum V'Tara Sheheshim Nidnu Daveru the Tumah the Lo Yichsharu. Nothing was Mukshal Kabel Tumah yet. If we're talking about somebody that's careful about Meiser, what's V'Kulon? You're saying a general term V'Kulon. You can't be V'Kulon because there's some things that if you're careful about Meiser you don't have a problem, and if you're not careful about Meiser you do. Or Tumah, right? It's one thing's Tumah, one thing's Meiser. They're not equal. Then it's not the same halacha. So I'm the Gemara Reisha v'Seifa b'Tumah v'Tara. So the Reisha and the Seifa are talking about Tumah v'Tara. Not that the Reisha is talking about Meiser and the Seifa is talking about Tumah v'Tara, but side the Reisha and the Seifa are talking about Tumah v'Tara. So how do we understand that? So Reisha b'Tumah Chulin. The first case in the Mishnah that this woman that was Mitama the Paris Chulin, we're talking about where this Isha was Mitama the Paris Chulin that she was holding on to. So really, we should say that it's usher to work with her in the kitchen. But Mikal Makam the Chachamim were mad to Bnei Dרכי Shalom because it's only a Siddur Rabbanan, so it's not so bad. As on the condition that she's not going to eat from the Paris, from this dough, because it was made betum. And she's an Eishes Chaver, so she has to hold herself to a higher standard, not going to the neighbor's level of eating the thing betuma. And the Seifa that asks to be Messiah, once she puts in the water, that's talking about Tumas Chalo. So that's because once the Isha is going to be Metame this be a Dayib, so then it's going to be a Deraisa. Because the Pasuk says this Mishmeres Trumoisai, that you have to be careful you have to be Zohar to be careful to make sure that the Truma and the Chala is going to stay Torah. So you need to go out of your way to be Shomer, to make sure that the Truma doesn't become Tameh. Or in this case, the Chala shouldn't become Tameh. So practically Gemara Minu. Practically Gemara Astir from a Braisa. Samachala from a base. Teichnen umafkiden etzel euch leishvias etzel euch leperisam betoma avloilo euch leishvias avloilo euch leperisam betoma. What's this? So you're allowed to grind grain that you already took of Trumas and Meisers, and you're allowed to leave it as a bikodim by people that eat shvias be'isr. And you're also allowed to leave it by people that eat peris etzel euch leperisam betoma. And we're not afraid. I mean, what's the chash? The chash would be that we're chayshish that maybe they'll switch the Paris with the Paris Shvias or the Paris Tameim. So we're not chayshish for that. We're not chayshish that they're going to give you Paris Shvias that are also bimkaim your Paris which are kosher. Avlayla oichle shvias. But you're not allowed to leave it by oichle shvias because you're not allowed. Sorry, you're not allowed to grind. You're not allowed to work for oichle shvias. You're not allowed to grind the. You're not allowed to make flour for the Eichle Shvias because they're going to eat it be'isr. And you're not allowed to make it for the people that eat their food betuma. So mafkidin etzel Eichle Shvias etzel Eichle Perisem betuma, but not for the Eichle Shvias or the Eichle Perisem betuma. So Amar Abaya. So what's the kash over here? Because Rava said previously in the Gemara that the Reisha of the Mishnah says that you're allowed to do this with Dרכי Shalom. And over here saying that the Brisa says that it's Asr, meaning that across the board it's going to be Asr. So Amar Abaye says, Aktabaya, Hasa b'koyin achosh lechel truma b'tuma askinon, dahavalei tuma deraisa. So enter the Gemara that what we're talking about over here is a kohen that we suspect him that he eats truma b'tuma. So we already spoke last week that's awesome deraisa. That a kohen that's choshed on eating truma tmeya, that's awesome in Torah. So if I'm misayeh, if I'm helping, if I'm giving support to a kohen who eats truma b'tuma, then I'm being misayeh. If I'm misdiga is a deraisa, so I have to stay away from that. So in fact, the Gemara Yehochi mafkiden. So then, how am I allowed to? Zok Rashi Yehochi mafkiden iba kohen koy. If we're talking about a kohen, how can I leave it because by him? Mimatzi mafkiden that's like. Well, forget about what if he's going to switch it or not. He may touch it, and if he touches it, he's going to make a tummy. So you got to be careful. You can't just leave your stuff over there. So Zok the Gemara. Uremenu, Yehochi mafkid. Uremenu, in fact, the war asir mafkid truma etzel Yisrael ha'aretz. V'lo etzel kohen ha'aretz b'nei sheli b'gasu. We have another brisa that says that you're allowed to leave truma by Yisrael ha'aretz. So even though he's a guy that doesn't care about truma v'tara, really, right? But he's not going to eat it because he's not a kohen. He never eats truma. Ha'aretz always careful about truma. Ma'aser truma v'tara, nish gefallen. But truma, he's very careful. We're not allowed to leave it by a kohen ha'aretz. Why? Because he's a kohen. It's customary for him to eat the truma, so he's going to eat it. So he may touch it for truma. So you got to be careful with who you leave it by. To make sure that the guy who you're leaving it by, if he's a kohen, either you make sure he's a kohen that's makbid on tara, or you don't give it to a kohen who's going to eat it for truma. So what do we do with this? So Rabbi Law says, "Hakuma eskinon b'klicheres." Hamuk of tum is pasul. So the halacha is that if a klicheres we know is metame only teiche, an earthenware keli, only the inside of the keli is metame. Now, if it has a seal around it and you can close it and it can be sealed, so then there's no chance that they could get into the teiche of the kli. So then there's no tumah and it will be protected from tumah. So if I give this kohen a jar of some kind of truma in there, but this jar is sealed, so then there's no chash. It's not possible. It's not. As I say, it's not physically possible. The tumah is not physical, but it's not possible for this to become tamei because it's sealed. So, frankly, Gomar v'leicha shema tisitanu ishtay nida, but maybe we should be chayshish that his wife, when she's in nida, might move it. So then it's going to be tumas heset, right? Which is a tolda of the tumah of tumas masa, right? So even if she doesn't touch it, but there's still a chash, why aren't we chayshish for the tumas masa that his wife is going to touch it? Move it. Because tumas masa, even if you don't touch it, but if you move it, it's going to be considered, it's going to become tamei. What are we talking about? We're talking about where the Paris. This that we said that you're not allowed to leave it by this person is when the Paris are already mushal kabel tuma. So then you get it's much closer to becoming tamei. So you have to take extra steps to be careful that it won't actually become tamei. And this that we say that you are able to leave it by this person is when they're not susceptible to be makabel tumah. Yes, it's further away from the tumah. But tarvayu betruma, both cases are talking about truma. B'shalehen azul saya, and you are definitely not allowed to support them doing their malach in the kitchen. The chaver lo yada yichshu eloi, because the chaver is not going to know if they were hukshur with tumah or not. Okay, so we just got to stay away from it altogether if it's hukshur. So if it's not hukshur, so then you're okay. So we're talking about where it's not hukshur, so then we're fine. Okay, practically more nachastira. Reminu hamoy lechitel teichen kusi oile teichen ama oretz reile bechitz kosel l'mayt oile shvius avaloyle tuma. The Brisa says as follows: somebody who brings his wheat to get milled by a miller who's either a kusi or an amoret, so these are not trustworthy people, right? So harei elu bechitz kosel l'mayt oile shvius. It's still bechitz kosher, meaning we're not should anything happen to it. Yeah? So avalayla tuma. But when it comes to tuma, we say that it does become tamei, because these people are very careless about tuma. So cheshinun shamanoga, Rashi says we are chayshish that they touched it. right? And previously the Gemara mentioned that we are allowed to leave the stuff by them as a bekadon. But one second, if we're talking about that we're leaving stuff by them that we know is going to become tamei, meaning linyan meiser, we're not going to be chayshish that the guy's going to switch it for something else. But linyan tom, I know it's going to become tamei. So then, how can I leave it there? So frankly, the Gemara, interesting question. Hi, my room. What's the question over here? Lava kimne beperish lehuchshru. 1 second. A minute ago, we just said we're talking about Paris that are not Mokhshel Kaval Thomas, and therefore we don't have to be Chayshish for anything, right? So don't ask me a kasha don't ask me a steer from a price. We're talking about where it's Tameh, because we just said that we're talking about where it's not Mokhshel Kaval Thomas. So what are you talking about? With the Karila, my Karila, what was your Havamina to ask such a question? After we already established previously in the Gemara that we're talking about Paris Lehuchshru, so then there's no kasha. So Zakti Gemara, Mishum de Kavoy Lemir Me'achrite Allah. We wanted to ask another question from another brisa. We said that these pairs are becheskas, meiser, and shvius. And we're not chayshish that they're going to get switched for something else. Or we have another stira. And somebody who gives a dough to his mother-in-law to be misakended, and he's a chaver, and she's a eshes amaoretz, and she's going to be, she's going to touch her, she might make it tameh, right? This is my mother-in-law problem, right? So somebody gives something to his mother-in-law. See, before he gives it to her, if she's an eshes amaoretz, I guess that means that the shver is also amaoretz, right? It's a good shidduch. So then it's interesting because we'll see in the Gemara how who the Edom is. Edom's a chosh of a guy. So then he gives the meiser. So he has to take a meiser before. So he has to give meiser before he gives it to the mother-in-law, so as not to be nichshel the mother-in-law if she's going to eat it. And after the mother-in-law gives it back, he has to take a meiser again because maybe she switched it for something else that's from her stuff. That the mother-in-law is the one busy in the kitchen all the time, right? The son-in-law buys gunish from the kitchen. He's sitting and learning, or he's busy with his business, right? He doesn't know how to make challah, or he doesn't know how to make chocolate cake, right? See, he's going to come in all proud to his in-laws and he's going to say, "Oh, look, I made a chocolate cake." She's going to look at this. What a nebuchadnezzar cake, you think you know how to make anything in the kitchen. You got tzazach is nebuch, right? So, you got to take off meiser from what you give her and what you got back from her. Why? Because we suspect that she's playing around with it. Because she'll switch around his horrible kakish cake for something much nicer and much better that she made. So we see in this brayso that we are chayshish that the Am Haaretz is going to switch it around. The previous brayso said that there's no chash of switching it around. So no, it's not a problem. It's not a kasha. Why? Hasam over there in the brayso that says that the mother-in-law is going to switch it up. Tani time there's a special reason by mothers-in-law. Why that she's going to switch it? Because Rabbi Yehuda says right to Hibitakonas Bita, right? She wants she wants to give. She wants to give her daughter. She wants to give her son-in-law a great meal, right? She's embarrassed. So for her child, she doesn't care to give cold soup, right? But to give her son-in-law cold soup, she's not going to give the son-in-law cold soup. She's too embarrassed to do that, so she's going to be careful not to do that. We're not chayshish forever that they're going to be switching. But tonight we learned in the Mishnah that if you have a Talmud that Jeshel Pnei Rabbi and he's staying by Amoretz and Hanesin Lepundokis, if he gives it to the Achsanya that he's staying by to bake it for him, so Ma'asher Shunais and Love Shunaitel Men of Venetian Machlefes. So you see again another Mishnah that says that we are chayshish for switching. So, and that's not a case of the mother-in-law. It's a different case. So over there, she's not embarrassed. She's a host. She's a private chef. So Hasam Maria Amra Barbe Rav Lechel Chamima Va'ano Echel Karira. She says an interesting thing. She says a shtickle Maria Heter. It's not about Meiser. It's not about Meiser. What's it about? It's about that passage that says how Yeshiva Bach is a Yeshiva man as al essence of Kaltazach. So she's gonna give. What is Yeshiva guy? What does he know? He's sitting and learning all day. He doesn't know anything from anything. So he's gonna go to the store and buy some chaplap shvachem isis, and she's gonna want to fix it up for him. So she says it doesn't pass for him to eat such low quality stuff. So she's gonna give him stuff of higher quality. Just because he's going to eat hot food and I should eat cold food, meaning I should eat, so she wants him to have better food, so she's going to switch it up. All right, looks like we'll stop here and we'll continue from here tomorrow night, Bez Hashem. All right. Go ahead.